Tú eres muy malo, roto el pato de vestuario. La interpretación siempre negativa, nunca positiva.
Hello, welcome to Siempre Positivo after a crazy afternoon up the hill in Montjuic, where Barcelona came from 3-1 down to beat Celta Vigo 4-3 and take another massive step towards the La Liga title. I'm Sam Marsden, recording for a change on Saturday night with Rikesh Sharma. Rick, how are you?
Yeah, doing all right. Just like you, back down the hill, recovering from a crazy game. I don't know if we've ever recorded on a Saturday night before. I mean, I guess we probably have once, but I don't remember it.
Yeah, lots of reasons for recording on a Saturday night. This fixture congestion, I think I've mentioned it on a previous pod, is really affecting our rhythm. We've had to give Tony the weekend off to take a mental break. He does live the podcast and journalism really intensely, and I feel like this break will benefit him ahead of the final stretch of the season. A nice, quiet sort of couple of days weekend away with his girlfriend.
I don't think there is any helping Tony. El Tony is El Tony.
Our referee, Strand, he will say that Tony's always away and always on holiday and always enjoying himself. But Tony does live, when he's in Barcelona, he does live the profession very intensely. And I think that's why he has to step away from sport at the end of the season.
Yeah. Still no word on his future.
Yeah, so that's one reason, obviously, the fixture congestion. But with Barca playing again on Tuesday, it just felt like this was a good slot to record, because if we left it on Sunday, it might not be possible Monday. Before you know it, all thoughts are on Mallorca's visit on Tuesday. So here we are, Saturday night. What we're going to do is we're going to drop this one on Patreon for members on Saturday night. We're going to update it on Sunday night, so there'll be an updated version. All this will be the same, but we'll just stick a bit on the end about the Barca Femeni game. They're in action on Sunday, 6 o'clock. So we'll talk about that later in the podcast if you're listening to it after that game. Barca Chelsea at the Johan Cruyff Stadium, first leg of the semi-final, and then it'll all drop as usual on Monday morning. So if you're listening on Monday morning, Tuesday, whenever you are listening in the week, in the usual sections and not on Patreon, then ignore everything what I've just said and enjoy what me and Rick are about to say, I guess.
Try to enjoy it, yeah.
We will come to Barca. It's a bit like when me and Tony recorded last week, because we recorded as well on a night time after Barca. Not after the Barca game, but after the Real Madrid game. We were kind of a little bit absorbed by what had just happened between Real Madrid and Arsenal. And I'm a little bit absorbed, perhaps wrongly, because in the scheme of it, Atletico were already out. But now Atletico are out of the title race. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, 10 points behind Barca with 6 games to go. It can't happen. I mean, it can't happen, can it? So, yeah, over. Red Rover.
Yeah, I was hoping you would give some context there, because you've just been reporting on the game, and you would say, yeah, they've just lost. Yes, Sam, they've just lost to Las Palmas.
Right. They lost just 1-0 to Las Palmas with a Javi Munoz 93rd minute goal after a very drab game in which neither team did a great deal. Atletico forced 2 great saves from Jorquez, the Las Palmas goalkeeper. Julian Alvarez with a point-blank shot. Maybe one of the saves of the season, actually. No, I'm thinking about it. It's one of the best saves I've seen this season for sure. Point blank range, and he sticks out his arm and he saves it. The ball's behind him and he manages to save it. Obviously, there's an element of fortune in it, in that maybe he didn't have complete control of his arm and reaching out to stop the ball. He just had it out and he saved it. But yeah, great save. And then another good save from Alexander Soloth header, both from very, very good Giuliano Simeone crosses, pinpoint accurate on the crosses. I've always been impressed with Simeone, young Simeone, watching him this season, electric on the right. But of course, we're not here to talk about that game, are we?
Yeah, well, that game was obviously, you mentioned a few interesting things from that game, but completely different to the Barca game earlier in the day. I just wanted to mention it because it was just fresh in my mind, and it was kind of, I mean, I don't think it's that bold or brave to say Atletico are now out, and most of us before had already ruled them out before this weekend, but now they're really sort of, gone, absolutely gone. They've absolutely, I don't know if crumbled is a bit harsh, but since going out of the Champions League to Real Madrid and that Julian Alvarez penalty, they've, things have gone really, really, really south for Diego Simeone's side. Barca's season or title hopes threatened to go a little bit south on Saturday against Celta Vigo, but they turned things around with an incredible comeback. Hansi Flick started the game with a couple of changes. We finally saw a break for Lamine Yamal. He started on the bench for the first time after 26 consecutive starts for club and country. The last time he didn't play a game was Barca's win over Barbastro at the start of the year when he was, of course, coming back from an injury which had ruled him out at the end of 2024. He then came back for the Supercopa and has started every Barca and every Spain game since. And Barca took the lead through Ferran Torres, who came in for Lamine Yamal. He scored his 17th goal of the season, his 10th in La Liga. Nice goal. He took it around old Barcelona face Marcos Alonso and found the bottom corner from the edge of the box. And at that point, it looked like Barca would have a relatively trouble-free afternoon after a difficult weekend or a difficult game away at Leganés last weekend. But then some absolutely hideous defending let Celta Vigo straight back into the game. Borja Iglesias with the equaliser, Tech Chesney not covering himself in glory, coming for a cross after Celta had got in down the left behind Gerard Martin, and Iglesias was left with a tap-in. That was how it stayed until half-time, 1-1. And then an absolutely crazy opening sort of 25 minutes to the second half. So Borja Iglesias completed his hat-trick. First scoring the second of his afternoon in the 52nd minute when another woeful mistake from Barcelona, this time from Frenkie de Jong, who completely sort of misread the ball, which was played over the top. Borja Iglesias had a free run on goal and still a good finish into the bottom corner past Chesney. 10 minutes later, 62 minutes, Borja Iglesias made it 3. By this time, Barcelona had just brought on Lamine Yamal and Dani Olmo. Obviously 2-1 down, chasing the game, wanting to try and turn things around. They gave the ball away in the final third. Literally one punt over the top. Barca's high line was, it was what's higher than a high line because they were all miles down the pitch. Iglesias was basically on the halfway line on his own and was able to run in, clean through with Chesney and make it 3-1. As Barca did when they came back against Atletico last month from 2-0 down to win 4-2. And I think this was important. They responded almost immediately. Dani Olmo scoring within 2 minutes. And it's just that goal which sort of, Celta Vigo never get time to not rest on their 3-1 lead, but, make changes or adapt to it. And it doesn't fester. And all of a sudden it's straight back to 3-2. All the momentum is with Barca. And all of a sudden, 68th minute, so just 6 minutes after Iglesias had made it 3-1, it's 3-3. Rafinha heading home, cross from Lamine Yamal. At that point, maybe some Barca fans thought Celta Vigo would still go and get it. But from my point of view, that felt all the momentum was with Barca. Surely they go on and win this game. They've got over 20 minutes. But it actually took until the 98th minute and a penalty decision, which wasn't given on the pitch, was given, the VAR obviously advised the referee to go and take a look at a foul on Dani Olmo. The referee gave the penalty. Rafinha slotted it. That was the 98th minute and 3 points for Barcelona. It takes them 7 points clear of Real Madrid, who play on Sunday. So some of you listening may already know the result from the Real Madrid game. They host Athletic Club at the Santiago Bernabeu. But yeah, a really awkward afternoon for Barcelona, who were not only 3-1 down, but even at 3-3, there were a couple of moments where Celta Vigo, Mingueza with a header could have stole the points themselves. Their coach Claudio Giraldes certainly felt they were at least good value for a point, if not 3. But one of those games in a completely different way. But like Leganés, where Barca won 1-0 despite not really being at their best. They've won a game 4-3, which at points it looked like they had no right to win. And it's probably a win that A, pushes them closer to the title, but B, you look back on and you go, that's probably one of the wins again. Like I say, back-to-back weeks now where they've won a game and you think, the league title's coming to Barcelona.
Yeah, this one, I'd say even more so than the Leganés one. Leganés one, it could have been a draw, and I still think the title's coming to Barcelona. Whereas this one, coming back from 2 goals down, it just shows that they've got their name written on the trophy this season, Barca, in La Liga. And I think in the first half, there was a point where, in fact, for most of the first half, after sort of the 2 goals, so Ferran opens the scoring, Borja Iglesias equalises, the Panda, and then after that, the rest of the half, Barca are just playing kind of casually. They're making a few chances, conceding a couple of chances at the other end as well, but they're just kind of drifting. It's one of those games where they're drifting, they're slack, they're sloppy, like they've got nothing to play for. Obviously, they've got a bigger games ahead, thinking perhaps even beyond the next one against Mallorca to the Copa del Rey final against Real Madrid. Of course, that's starting to appear on the horizon and start to be in people's thoughts. And it seems, with given how bad Madrid were over their 2 legs against Arsenal, knocked out the Champions League, that I don't think there's many people who don't think Barca will win this league. But the way they won't win is if they keep playing like this and defending like this. Because at the end of the day, it's not assuming, obviously we're recording, like you say, before Madrid play tomorrow, but assuming Madrid win tomorrow, it's only a 4-point gap So it's still not the biggest gap, but most people, including by the looks of it, Barca players, think they're expecting to win this title. And it changed a lot when Lamine came, and obviously Dani Olmo as well. He had a big part to play too. But for me, it's as we saw earlier in the season, when Lamine wasn't playing, Barca weren't up to much. He just adds an impulse that I think the other players find it quite hard to add. I know Rafinha can do it too, but there's not many other players in the team who can add that sort of cut and thrust that Lamine can add and turn situations where Barca shouldn't be able to make danger into situations which are extremely dangerous. Like for Rafinha's goal was a Lamine cross. Just it delivered the ball so perfectly to like an absolutely peak level of danger area in the box where the goalkeeper can't quite come and get it, and Rafinha just has to head it into the net. Yeah,
like you say, maybe I'm overselling it, because if Madrid do win against an Athletic side that have just reached the Europa League semi-final and perhaps will have one eye on, not on that because it's not immediately around the corner, but resting players after the efforts against Rangers in midweek, it is just 4 points. There is a Clásico to come. There is still a long way to go in this title race with 6 games to go, but it did feel like a big win. You mentioned the defensive stuff there, Rick. Do you think this was defensive issues as in like a concern in sense of it was more individual mistakes as opposed to... I mean, the defending was bad throughout the game, to be fair, but the goals were down to mistakes, weren't they?
Yeah, I mean, I guess so, but I mean, I've said it from the start. I know it's been in 2025 a streak of unbeaten games, 24 unbeaten games before the Borussia Dortmund defeat, which has kind of warped the conversation a bit. But as I said at the start of the week, actually, but I was talking about specifically about Szczesny and the clean sheets and the numbers with Szczesny, but it's true of the whole team. This Barca were keeping loads and loads of clean sheets without necessarily having the structure that you would expect a team to have who can keep these clean sheets, with Pedri and Frenkie de Jong as the base of the midfield. That's not a midfield that I expect to be regularly keeping clean sheets. I'm not surprised that this has happened. And if maybe by the end of the season you iron out the stats and you do the averages, I'm sure they'll probably let in like not a brilliant number of goals conceded. I think it will be a fairly average for a title winning team number of goals conceded, because there is no defensive midfielder, partly because Casado's injured and Bernal's injured, but also because, I mean, even with those two, obviously Bernal, we just saw the start of his career. We don't really have no idea what he's going to be like long term. But with Casado, I think it was just he's, as we said, like a squad player rather than a regular starter. And Frankie, good player. Obviously, he made an individual mistake in this game, but even systematically, Frankie and Pedri, we'll call them as a pair.
I wonder if anyone's used that before. You've just invented it. You can trademark it. Fredri.
Coined it by accident, yeah. Fredri isn't a midfield that's going to stop everything all the time. There's going to be a lot of pressure on the defence. And certainly when they don't have Alejandro Balde, who's, I guess Koundé as well, but Balde is so quick and so good at helping to recover, and just has defended very well since he's been in the team, basically. The one flaw we had with Balde was that he was struggling to attack, which is something he's also worked on and improved in the last few months. But defensively, he's been good. And without him and with Gerard Martin, it was a horror show, really, watching him in this game against Celta, I think this Barca is very vulnerable. This did not make me confident ahead of the Inter semi-final.
This game doesn't have a massive reflection. I genuinely don't think, and maybe it's naive, that they'll defend like that against Inter. There are some things obviously that worry me about the upcoming Clásico final and the Inter games, but it's not those things per se. I just think Koundé and Inigo Martinez were way below the level that they've been at this season. I just want to say as well that I enjoyed all the Koundé stuff on Friday. I don't know if other people did. When he was Hansi Flick was asked why he didn't ever rest Koundé, and he said, because if I rest him for like half an hour, he goes for a run in Sitges the next day. And then this video surfaced on social media of Koundé running up a ramp at like a car park, is it, or a hotel in New York?
No, it looks like a street in New York.
But he's coming out of like an underground parking or like a hotel or something, isn't he?
Maybe
But anyway, and there's this guy who's there going like, what's this crazy guy doing running here? And he's like running his Barca gear with a phone. It looked legit to me. It completely fooled me. I think also because Koundé retweeted it with a comment saying like, what's going on here? That's not responsible at all. Like, what was I doing? And why was I running in my kit and stuff? So that was quite funny after that, because it turned out to be AI, apparently. Foul on the Discord said it was AI, which completely shattered my Friday night, because I was absolutely loving that video and the idea that Koundé was just out running all the time.
Sprinting down a road.
But anyway, the point is that, for all the running that he's done, he can still have an off day. And I thought he just had an off day. Inigo Martinez had an off day. I was wondering about Inigo Martinez. To reference to the Discord again, Chris P mentioned, it was true. He was sort of defending far too wide to the left, and De Jong was dropping back in alongside. I don't know if it was a tactic or not. I don't know if subconsciously he's doing it because he's thinking he needs to protect Gerard Martin a little bit more. I don't know if it's something Flick had suggested for the second half. Because for De Jong to be dropping in and taking up that sort of deep position as well, it was presumably perhaps something they'd worked on or been told to do. But it created a little bit of confusion and was probably the fault for definitely the second goal, if not the third goal as well, just the way they were positioned and so high. So I think those were things which were more just to do with off days, players not being at their top level. And I think they will be switched on when the Clasico final, when the Champions League semi-finals come around. Not necessarily to win the games or that they'd be bulletproof in those games, but I think the things that we saw specifically in this game aren't something to massively worry about long term, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I mean, I certainly think that the team will be better, have a better attitude and better focus when they play in those big games. But sometimes it's easy to walk into a slump, but it's not so easy to walk out of a slump. Yeah,
I don't know if they'd be, because they've won the game still, and the defeat to Dortmund was a game which they also won the tie. Nothing has cost them yet, so I don't know if you could say a slump.
No, I'm not saying they're in a slump, but I'm just saying they could be walking down a ramp, like Koundé was running out of a ramp, but walking down a ramp towards a slump, the same way they were in November, December last year. And I think the fact they won this game is a great sign that they can avoid that, because it showed. I mean, as soon as they got that first goal or second goal of the game, I suppose, but the first goal of the comeback from Dani Olmo, they hit a new gear that they didn't show in the previous sort of hour of the game. And I think I said in the Discord, I definitely believe I believe in this comeback as soon as Dani Olmo scored that, because you could just see they were ready to do it. But they, like you pointed out when we talked about it in the press room after the game, they did slow down for a little bit, and then they had that Mingueza chance where he should have scored. That's pure agent Mingueza saving Barca by heading off target from about 1 yard.
Yeah. Well, then it still takes a 98th minute penalty. I think the one area where I do worry is, and I don't like to pile on because he's not done loads of individual mistakes. Could he have done better for the first goal? Perhaps yes, in terms of his positioning. But I just think the downgrade from Balde to Gerard Martin, and I've said it before, it's just so huge. I would be worried about that in the games, Real Madrid, Inter, to keep going back to those games. It's unavoidable to not keep going back to those games when they're 4 of Barca's next 6 games.
Yeah. And what is your position on the state of the left-back situation at the moment? For me, at this point, I think you can't play Gerard Martin in those games against those teams. And against Mallorca, Flick has to invent something to try an alternative, basically, ahead of the
He almost game. Kind of like forewarned that when he said after the game today that he might rest Gerard Martin against Mallorca. And I guess like Saturday, he's played, this is someone who's playing at a level that he's never played at before, like the mental drain it must have been for him to come in for Balde and play these games specifically away against Dortmund, and to be thrown in there. Even though Barca had the 4-0 lead, it's like a different level that he's ever played at. He was playing, Catalan, Spanish. He was playing in the Cornea I don't know what league he was playing in, the third tier, was it, or the fourth tier with Cornea? But anyway, he was playing very low-level football 2 or 3 years ago, playing for Barca's second team last year in the third division. A bit like Fermin, I guess, the year before, but without necessarily the same sort of rapid improvement. So maybe there has been a mental drain for him in these 2 games, and maybe physically as well. It is a push for him to play on the Tuesday, but Flick said we may need to rest him. So it would be interesting if he did rest him, who he would play at left back, because Hector Fort's the obvious one, but Hector Fort isn't like an inventing something. Hector Fort is just, we need a body in there, we'll stick him in there because he's played there, he is a full-back, etc. I don't know if he would invent something. I know people are actually, I've noticed more and more people jumping on board with, it's not your shout, but you loved it, the Gavi shout.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a massive thing to do at this point in the season. I don't think it will happen. I think more realistically, we could see something like Eric Garcia playing at left back.
I think Gerard, I don't know about Mallorca because he has suggested that Martin won't play, but I think in the final, it doesn't look like Balde will be back, save a miracle. Gerard Martin plays there.
Well, I think whatever happens on Tuesday will help Flick decide whether Gerard Martin plays there or not. What if he puts Eric there and Eric has a great game against Mallorca? I think he'd just keep him in the team.
Yeah. Just one other thing that Flick mentioned that I was maybe overly interested by, and it wasn't really necessarily an important comment, but he said about the November-December run. And he said this doesn't happen then, because obviously Barca have had 3 comebacks now in this year from 2 goals down against Benfica in Portugal in January, against Atletico Madrid twice. They came back once, they didn't win, but they came back and ended up drawing. And against Atletico Madrid in the league, they came back from 2-0 down and won 4-2. And Flick said in November and December, maybe it's just like a German English to translate, but he said that doesn't happen because there was negativity. But I think what he meant was more about, like if not among the players or the sort of dressing room, because he's always spoke very sort of glowingly about the atmosphere among the players. But I think he meant, when they go behind in games or when they have challenges within games, there was sort of heads go down. And he said that's been flipped now and it's just pure positive energy.
Yeah, I think we can see that, and I think he's right about that. And I think that's a good thing for Barca. Back then, it was like the players still weren't completely convinced. They had the confidence, like we said, of beating Madrid and Bayern, but then they lost the confidence, and at that point they were like, oh, maybe we're not great. Maybe we're not a team is gonna be capable of winning things. Maybe we were too big for our boots. But now I think it's a team that sort of sees the global picture a little bit better and knows the quality they have, knows that they have to be on to win, and knows when they haven't been on and how to get back to being on to get the points.
Yeah. Just one final thing before the ratings as well, just to mention. Robert Lewandowski went off injured in the 77th minute. Hansi Flick, by the time you're listening to this, we may well know a little bit more about how long he will be out for. Hansi Flick didn't want to comment. He said it's best to wait in these situations. I wouldn't like to guess before he undergoes tests on Sunday. But it looked like he pinched his hamstring a little bit. Early indications are perhaps a couple of weeks. Barca play Mallorca Tuesday, Real Madrid Saturday, Inter Milan the following Wednesday. How big a loss would Lewandowski be at this stage of the season? I guess with the caveat that against Mallorca, Ferran Torres is fine. In the Copa del Rey final, what he did in the semi-finals was he played Ferran anyway. So Inter's probably the first big loss when Lewandowski would have started. But it's more than anything, more than the loss of Lewandowski. It's just you add it to the loss of Balde, to the loss of Casado not so long ago, and it's just leaving you with a little bit of obviously less depth, but just less room for error. It feels like you're a little bit short. Obviously, with the boost of Dani Olmo coming back, though, is the flip side, I guess. Yeah,
that's true. I think the key thing with the loss of Lewandowski regarding Ferran, for example, is that Ferran's been really good lately, and part of that is because he's so fresh and he can explode into games. And obviously, if you end up having to play Ferran in every single match because Lewandowski's not there, he won't have that freshness anymore. And Barca won't really have any option to bring in a player on to sort of change the dynamic in that way. Maybe it will end up being Gavi being sort of the player they bring, or maybe Fermin Lopez ends up with Dani Olmo as a starter and Fermin comes on to shake things up. But it's just losing another tool. And at the end of the day, who do you back to score in the biggest games? It's Lewandowski. Even at 36, the amount of goals he's scored this season, the times he has scored and shown in recent weeks that he's, even if we thought for a while he looked like he was dipping away, he came back strong again. I think Barca need Lewandowski. I think if they're going to win that tie against Inter, then I would have imagined it would be at least with 1 or 2 goals Lewandowski over the tie.
The shark will be sharp in his teeth, though, at the thought of a run of games against Mallorca, Real Madrid and Inter Milan, and the chance to prove himself as the central striker between Rafinha and Lamine Yamal. And I guess preferably, it looks a lot better if you're going without Lewandowski, if you are playing Dani Olmo as the 10 and Ferran as the 9, and you've got those two who can not alternate, but they do have that chance to be a little bit more mobile than it would be with Lewandowski as the 9. The
positive way to look at it is we saw earlier in the season, every time that Lewandowski was out and Ferran Torres was playing as the 9 and Barca were scoring 4 goals in every game, including against Mallorca. I think they scored 5 against Mallorca with this setup, with Ferran up front as false 9 in the first game in Son Moy. So the positivo way to look at it would be a chance for Barca to continue going with that it worked well and it could work again ahead of this. And also, teams, I guess, Inter can look back and look at those tapes of Barca without Lewandowski, but there's a lot more footage of Barca with Lewandowski, and it's a bit harder for Inter to predict how Barca will play when they don't have him.
Yeah. All right, then let's hear potentially the freshest ratings ever. No excuses this week.
Yeah, well, yeah, true. No excuses in terms of we're recording just a few hours after the game, but yes, excuses in that I haven't written anything down, so I'm just doing it off the cuff. We'll start with Tech. 4 out of 10 for Tech. Not very good. For the first goal, came out of his goal to try and get that cross. This is why you wanted to do a Saturday night podcast, wasn't it? That you couldn't wait to lay into Tech. You were like, let's do it Saturday night. Let's do it while it's fresh, and I can turn on Chesney. No, as I said to you, actually, I'm quite happy I said what I said about Chesney and the clean sheets at the start of this week. Before he made his mistakes against Dortmund and today. Tony's actually had because it was a joke. The numbers were a joke. We weren't seeing what was happening in real life reflected in the numbers. Yeah, Tony's had to escape the city to get away from Rick's gloating. I haven't been gloating. And I also think Tech was bad for the third goal as well, because Iglesias breaks through more or less on the halfway line, and Tech starts backpedaling back into his box, and then starts coming out again a bit too late. He made some saves as well. He made a double save in the first half, but they were both straight at him. I'm not going to hold it against him. All he can do is save those shots, and that's what he does. But they were straight at him. But I'm not being harsh on Tech, 'cause I also give the same rating to Jules Koundé. I thought he was really poor as well. 4 out of 10 for him. Look, it's like his technique had completely deserted him. I mean, he's not the most technical player in the world. Occasionally he does make sort of technical errors on the ball, but in this game he just kept giving it away, and poor defensively. Kubasi, he was poor too, 4.5. Inigo, I'll give a 4 to as well. Gerard Martin, 3.5. He's probably 3.5. Yeah, seems unfair to give him lower than everyone else in the back five. No, I don't think it is unfair. I think it's very fair. It depends. It's a bit like when you used to judge Messi, like you judge on a different scale. I feel like with Gerard Martin, you also have to judge on a different scale, but for the yeah, right. Gerard Martin on his own scale, I'll give him a 5 out of 10 in this game. I probably would give him. That is fair. I am inconsistent with how I judge the players, because with Messi, I always had to do him on his own scale because there was no point judging him against the rest of the team. Whereas Gerard Martin, I'm kind of judging on Balde's scale because that's who he's in for. I do want to be nice about Gerard Martin, because sometimes it does feel like you're piling on a little bit. I just ultimately think he doesn't quite have the level for the position he's found himself in. But I do think it's true that he has improved slightly this season. Flick obviously has given him a lot of chances. It's not his fault that he's getting all these chances, and he has improved a little bit. I don't want to make it seem like I'm piling on too much, but ultimately I don't think he'll have the level to play for Barcelona even as the backup left back. Yeah, agree. Frankie de Jong, 4.5 out of 10. Again with the error for the second goal. Pedri, wasn't Pedri's best game by any means, but it was okay. Give him 6 out of 10. Fermin Lopez can have 5.5 out of 10. Then you have Rafinha, who I'm going to give 7 out of 10. I know he scored 2 goals, but... And set the Olmo goal? And he set up the Olmo goal as well. Actually, Lewandowski did quite well for the Olmo goal too, before Rafinha had it. Maybe it's a bit harsh. Maybe give it 7.5 out of 10, Rafinha. But it wasn't a great performance, but he was there when they needed him for the goals. Lewandowski, I'll give 6. Ferran Torres, I'll give 7 too. He was kind of bright, scored that goal, and then got taken off. And then Lamine Yamal, I'm going to give 8 off the bench, and Dani Olmo I'm going to give 8.5 off the bench. I think those two were... The comeback was in their boots. How's Lamine Yamal getting more than Rafinha? Because Lamine Yamal is one of the 2 factors with him and Dani Olmo who actually made this comeback possible. With Rafinha sort of as the team's creative attacker on the pitch and driving the team, they were 3-1 down. It took Olmo and Lamine coming on to change the game, and they really did change everything. So I don't know if that's Rafinha's fault. It's not his fault, but I gave him a decent enough rating. He scored, he's tucked away his penalty. And he scored a header from 2-3 yards that Lamine set up. I think he deserves an 8 if you're giving Lamine an 8 as well. Maybe. Okay, that's all for, a public information announcement now. Is that what it's called? Public service information? What's the... PSR, public service announcement. Public service announcement. We will be back later in the week, obviously after the Mallorca game with Tony, and we'll also have a Classico Copa del Rey themed, I guess, in a way, if you can keep your questions that way. Q&A ahead of the game on Saturday in Seville, that huge final where Barca can
can win a second trophy of the season. If you're listening on Saturday, that's it for now. Stay positive. If you're listening after Sunday night or on Monday, then hang around for some news on how Barca Femeni got on against Chelsea. Stay positive. Welcome back to Siempre Positivo 24 hours later after Barca Femeni's extraordinary 4-1 win against Chelsea in the first leg of their Champions League semi-final at the Johan Cruyff. Still Sam, still Rick here. Rick, just before we comment on the Barca Femeni game, which you were at this afternoon, I guess we should update on what we spoke a little bit about in the first half of the podcast. And Real Madrid being 7 points behind, they are now 4 points behind after a last gasp win against Athletic Club on Sunday.
Yeah, it was not a brilliant match to watch. It was just sort of slow pressure from Madrid building through the game. They were good value in the end for their win, even if it came in the 93rd minute through Fede Valverde with an absolutely sublime strike. I mean, he'd been taking a few pot shots and this one flew into the top corner. Madrid had a goal disallowed for offside. It was offside, I think. It was one of those in the build-up offsides. And also, it wasn't a player who touched the ball. It was a judgment call from the ref, but he was interfering Endrick, and so I think it fairly disallowed. And Athletic had changed, I think it was 10 out of the 11 players that started on Thursday in the Europa League. So they were certainly not their strongest, and Nico was injured as well, so he wasn't even in the squad. But Madrid are back on Barca's tail in the league, yeah. Was that a better roundup of the game?
Better than that pathetic Atletico Madrid Las Palmas one, yeah? Pretty much summed it up, yeah. Like you said, as an Athletic Club side with 10 changes after playing Thursday night in the Europa League, I think we commented on expecting them to make a lot of changes. Their hearts weren't really in the game at the Bernabeu on Sunday, and despite that, they almost did grab a draw. Like you say, it took a 93rd, 94th minute goal from Fede Valverde, but it's as you were at the top of La Liga after this weekend. Barcelona is still 4 points clear of Real Madrid. One game to go in the league before the Copa del Rey final. Barcelona against Mallorca on Tuesday and Real Madrid against Getafe a day later. Let's get on to Barca Femeni then, because they, myself included, I don't want to say silence doubters, but there have been some people who wanted to see this sort of performance from them and wondered if perhaps the gap had been closed between them and teams like Chelsea. And on Sunday's evidence, they took Chelsea apart at the Johan Cruyff Stadium. There was absolutely no doubt about the deserved winners. Barca winning 4-1. They took the lead in the first half through Eva Payot, set up by Alexia Putellas, who had already missed a penalty at that point. Then Claudia Pina made it 2-0 in the second half. Chelsea did briefly get back in the game through Sandy Baltimore, but Barca killed the game off in the final 10 minutes. Eleni Paredes heading in from a corner in the 82nd minute, and Claudia Pina adding her second, Barca's fourth, to make it 4-1. A lovely move with her and Alexia, if you get the chance to check that goal out. Pina scooping up a pass to Alexia returning it to Pina with a back heel, and Pina perhaps via a slight deflection hammering it home to give Barca a nice lead to take to Stamford Bridge next week. Rick, it was a fair scoreline, wasn't it? I think the scoreline reflects the game, if not flatters Chelsea a little bit.
I wouldn't go quite that far. I would say, yeah, it reflects the game. Barca were dominant in the game. The thing is, what the Barca that we've been talking about this season, the one that's not been quite as good as perhaps Jonathan Giraldez's Barca from last season that won the quadruple. Obviously, this team can still win the quadruple as well. Is that after Sandy Baltimore scored for Chelsea and it was 2-1 to Barca, before those late goals from Paredes and Pina, this was exactly the kind of result that you'd say, this is why this Barca team isn't as good as Barca teams we've seen in the past.
Let's just point out that they had lost both legs, not lost both legs, but they hadn't beaten Chelsea in either home leg in each of the last two seasons. This is the third season in a row they've met Chelsea in the semi-final. Last season they lost to them 1-0 in the first leg at Montjuic at the Olympic Stadium, and the year before, I think it was at Camp Nou, they drew 1-1.
Yeah, that's right, and they
so even to beat them 2-1 would have technically been an improvement.
An improvement,
results-wise.
No, that's right. But given the performance, it was sort of slack to let Baltimore in to score that goal. It was sloppy with regards to not scoring more goals of their own. So I was impressed, and I was surprised by the result that Barca got. But I would say, and as Pedro Romeo actually said after the game, this is not over. We're actually very, very even, and everything went for us today, but on other days it won't. So I think the result has puts Barca with 1 foot into the final, and it is deserved. But it's not maybe quite as clear cut as maybe you were saying, or maybe people might think by just looking at the result, looking at the
I think
the stats from the game. Barca had 19 shots.
You maybe conflated two things there. I'm not saying the tie is over at 4-1. Far from it. Well, I think obviously Barca are going to go through to the final and are massive favourites. I don't see Chelsea overturning it, but I do think there is a situation where if they get a goal, it could get a little bit nervy. I thought Barca could have scored 5 or 6, not just because they missed a penalty and scored 4 goals, but also there was, before they scored the 4th, there was Pajor fired one over from some awful defending from Millie Bright. There was another one when Aitana carried it through on her own when she could have passed it left and Pajor would have been in, could have scored another one. There were a lot of chances they could have scored more goals, I thought, and Chelsea didn't really create too many chances. I mean, if you look at the shots, they had 2 shots on goal. One of them was the goal, of course, to Barca 19 shots. I just thought 4-1 was the least Barca deserved.
You are right about the chances that Barca had, but not necessarily about the chances that Chelsea had. Not that they had more chances, which they didn't. But I think for a long time in this game, it was being played how Chelsea wanted it, which was they were 1-0 down, and they were quite happy with that. They were quite happy with being 1-0 down and taking that 1-goal disadvantage back to Stamford Bridge, where they would have thought they had a good chance of turning the tie around against Barca. But Claudia Pina scored the second, and from there the game just opened up, and a lot of things happened in the last 20 minutes. It became quite a wild game. It had been quite controlled before that from both teams in a way, because Barca were also not unhappy with leading and having most of the ball and looking after that. But Chelsea were actually very, very content with the scoreline, which is why I wasn't that impressed with the performance as a whole. By the end, the result and what Barca did in the last 20 minutes was very good. But Chelsea were completely content for most of this game until Pina scored her goal.
Pedro Romeo also said that was always the plan with Pina, to get her on and to kill the game off, and that's what she did. She's the top scorer in the Champions League now, 9 goals, another 2 tonight. Both good goals. The first goal was a really good team move. I think 18 passes, maybe 16 passes, including one from Pina in her own half, and then she absolutely sprints to the other end to be on the end of a tap-in from Onabachu. And as I mentioned before, her goal with Alexia as well in the 90th minute was also a good one.
Yeah, we talked about Pina when we were walking down the hill on another pod, when we recorded that pod when we were walking. Because I remember joking about her going to Arsenal in a few years' time, because she might not be that happy being a substitute. But I'm sure she probably is quite happy tonight.
I do like Pina as a character and as a personality. I think in the past I've just spoken about whether she quite has the all-round game. She's a great goal scorer. She's got a great shot on her. Whether she quite has the all-round ability to be a top player, regular starter at Barca, making the difference in the big games. And she did that today, I guess, against Chelsea, so I can't complain about that. And I do like her as a goal scorer, and as just her character as well is quite nice. Yeah,
it's quite spiky sometimes in interviews, situations, or mix zone. I tell you what, there were a few things I noticed from this game that I quite liked. I think Paralluelo was good. Wasn't decisive in the sense that she didn't sort of get any goals or assists in this one, but she had a good performance and seems to be improving. And with the exception of her penalty miss, I thought Alexia was quite good, which is a positive for Barca as we get to the business end of the season, and maybe she's starting to look a little bit more. I won't say she's gone back to being what she was, and maybe she never will. And I think she has, as I said to you on WhatsApp, actually lost a little bit of what pace she had. But in terms of her overall performance, there were some really, really nice moments, and maybe a bit more consistent than other times I've seen her.
Yeah, I thought Alexia was good. The thing with Alexia and Salma is they're both players who have had injury problems in recent years to different degrees and different extents and different times on the sideline. But they're both players who look at the moment like they could finish the season on a high. And that's important because today probably Aitana Bonmati wasn't at her best. Caroline Graham-Hansen started quite well and went from más to menos, as they say here, from more to less, because she was ill yesterday. She didn't train on Saturday. She stayed at home. She was sick. She did come. She did start, but probably was slightly playing within herself. And then you've got players, like you say, like Salma, Alexia, who step up, Pina off the bench. I also thought Eleni Paredes did a good job defensively. I don't know, I've voiced some doubts about her as well recently in terms of prolonging her stay at the very, very top level, but she did a good job, better job than she's perhaps done in previous Chelsea games. Yeah,
solid enough. Mappy went off at half-time with sort of discomfort, but precautionary substitution, so hopefully we'll be fit going forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think with Aitana, she's because Alexia is sort of back in the team and playing regularly. I think it's almost natural that she dips a little bit back to. I mean, she certainly plays a little bit deeper than she was when obviously Alexia wasn't there. So maybe it's just appearing less in the game as a result of that.
Yeah, I don't think it was so much that today. I just thought she wasn't quite at her best in terms of decision making, but everyone has slightly off performances, off nights, and Barca still won 4-1, massive advantage. All to play for next Sunday at Stamford Bridge.
Yeah, just on the penalty actually. Two things about the penalty really. One, it reminded me of Arsenal's penalty against Real Madrid. It was one of those ones that nobody appealed for a penalty, and then out of nowhere, whoever's in the VAR booth was just like, "Hey, maybe there's a penalty here. Let's give a penalty," because it was a handball by
Natalie Bjorn,
Chelsea defender. Yeah, but it was. I mean, Paredes headed the ball. It hit Bjorn on the hand, but it didn't really. It just brushed against her hand, and it just carried on straight to where it would have been going anyway. The header, straight at the goalkeeper. So, straight at Hannah Hampton. It was a dubious penalty to give, and then the other thing I wanted to say about it, apart from the fact it was a really poor penalty from Alexia right down the middle, was there was a weird atmosphere in the ground at that point because Barca fans just went shh when Alexia was getting ready to take the penalty. So the stadium, apart from like a few Chelsea fans, was basically silent because everyone was just being shushed. So there was no noise when she took the penalty. But I mean, maybe if anything, that's more off-putting than anything else because in a football game, you expect there to be noise in the background while you're doing stuff.
Strange. I wasn't there at the game, so I didn't experience it. But yeah, a bit like a tennis serve or a snooker game saying silence, please.
Yeah, very odd. Didn't like that very much.
Yeah, interesting. Good win for Barca. We're halfway towards another Barca-Lyon final in Lisbon next month. Lyon beating Arsenal 2-1 away from home on Saturday. Just one final thing before we wrap up as well. Another game on Sunday, just because I just posted about it on social media. Barca Athletic are putting together a little bit of a run at the end of the season. They've won 3 of the last 4 games now. And the Fernandez cousins inspiring them to a 3-1 win against Real Union on Sunday. Just interesting because it is the Fernandez cousins and obviously 2 players to keep an eye on. 2 for Tony, 1 for Guille. And yeah, Barca won 3 of the last 4 games under Sergi Mila, who was just appointed last month. And yeah, they're 5 points from safety with 5 to play. So it could be interesting to keep an eye on in the final stages of the season. That really is all we've got time for now today. We'll be back later in the week with Tony after Barcelona, Mallorca, and with a Q&A ahead of the Clásico Copa del Rey final, which it looks like Barcelona will be without Robert Lewandowski, with the club confirming on Sunday he has a hamstring injury. We'll see when he can return, whether it's for the Champions League semi-finals or just how long he'll be sidelined for. So in the meantime, stay positive.